All right, so we're going to start a new video here on the Cobbosseecontee branch, which is a branch that ran off the main line up into a Cobbosseecontee stream valley, and it had a lot of industries on it. And I'm modeling my layout, and this is the start of it. And I'm going to get back into doing layout and less aircraft as I've put out for the last couple of months. So I just recently posted these pictures and setting the telephone poles and putting the guardrails along this road here. And now what I've done is I've come back up here. I have terrain formed and started putting where the road comes up to an intersection here. At this intersection, it was a stoplight and stuff, which I'll end up putting in there. And then it was a bridge that went across the Kennebec River. But right down here is a switch, and it's all covered up now to protect the track. And off of that switch, the track took a 4% grade up until it got to a street up above the track. Now, the only thing on my layout where I'm not being prototypical here is that because of space considerations, I have to run the main line underneath here. I'm going to hide it with, I think, foliage and maybe what looks like a bridge or duct, concrete underpass for it. But it has to dive underneath here because I didn't want to leave it out in the open. And originally I had planned on putting the actual stream in here, but I don't have enough clearance. And if I went any higher with the layout at this point, I don't think anybody of average height would be able to reach it, or anybody below average height. So what I've done is do a compromise here. So it'll come up on this 4% grade. I have got a lot of work to do here with the embankment structure where it's going to be held back with, this is some Chooch Industries cribbing, which I'm not going to use. Get into that some other time, but anyway. We come up here on this 4% grade, and then we go into street running. So up here is going to be street running, and you're going to come up to T.W. Dick's steel, which actually unloads gondolas and steel and loads scrap into the cars on the street. And the telephone poles is where the actual building would be, the main structural steel building, and on the other side of the tracks would be the another shed, and then the actual main office building right there. I'm still kind of considering how I'm going to do that, whether I'm going to put the main steel shed on this side or not. It's more a thing of operations, because I do like to operate the layout, and so sometimes I've compromised by making the layout better for operations than the actual layout. And after here there was another industry, Hildreth, and I'm not modeling that industry in this time. And then there would be a creek crossing, and the Cobbosseecontee Creek went across in a wooden trestle. It was a pretty neat scene, and if I was doing a smaller layout, I would probably include that in it and do more detail on this as it climbs up. And it's actually climbing the whole way. Mine comes up that 4% grade, and in here it's flat the rest of the way out. But in the actual reality, as you went up to these different industries, it was always climbing. And the industries were on the basically no grade, but the track going to each industry was on a grade going up, just shallower than the 4% grade that it started up to get to where it was at. So next in line here is this track right here, which is Harvey Distributors, and they would get bottled and tank cars of wine and bottle them, and it's an interesting industry. I've done some research on it, but I'm still not sure how the building actually looks. There's buildings where that actually is today, but it may have been a different layout back in, but I'm still researching that. And this switch right here would go into the paper mill. There was a large specialty paper mill here, and it would be a big customer on this branch in the time frame of the 70s where I'm at. And took a lot of box cars with wood pulp in it, and it would turn it into card stock, and I believe that went to American Greetings out in the Midwest, a lot of that card stock and stuff. And then the line also proceeded up, and at the end of the branch, which again I can't model it because of space considerations, there was another switch here that went to a paper mill and a hardware or you know, a home type business where they had hardware and lumber and stuff like that. That second paper mill, I think, was probably no longer in use by the time I'm modeling in the 70s, but there was a second paper mill up here, and there was a switch that went down to the hardware slash, you know, lumber distributor. So in this case, I'm just going to have the lumber distributor, and I'm not going to model the paper mill that was at here. And in reality, this would be far past the track that goes to the paper mill that I'm going to have right here. But again, compression. But to get the idea what was on this branch, we will have basically a paper mill, a hardware distributor, a spirits distributor, and a steel vendor that makes structural shapes of steel and also sent out scrap on this branch. 4 industries out of the 8 that could be modeled on it in the time frame. And we'll get into more detail, and I'll keep photographing this as I work on it. Talk a little bit about how I'm doing the road here. So the road is got a layer of fast and final on it that's very rough. I will be sanding this down and probably putting a second coat of fast and final to get it smooth. But I've used this technique on a lot of the roads in the layout, and you know, it actually was shown to me by somebody else in the Northern Virginia area here, and Pete does it on his New York Central layout. But I used it. You know, he does forms and sidewalks and stuff. I'm doing more country type roads like we had up here in this portion of Maine, where there's you know, there's shoulders, but there's not a whole lot of sidewalks and stuff like that in this particular roads, or most of the ones that I'm doing. All right, more for the update on the Cobbosseecontee branch. I have come in here this morning with a plan of laying out the actual buildings and the roadways and paths and stuff that work on this. Just before this video, I told you what's all going to be up here. And right now I've got my tool here, which is Google Map Images. And what I'm doing is, as you can see right here, there's a big, large building here. That's T.W. Dick Steel. There's an office right over here. There's a shed. Now, the light's glaring on this pretty bad, but there's a shed across the street from T.W. Dick's here. And so that shed's going to be put in there. And then as we come around here, there was another siding for a business in here that's been torn down, and now they've built new buildings. But that building was J.W. Hildreth. I'm not doing that. And then what happened was, as it left that area I was just pointing at, it crossed the Cobbosseecontee stream right here. But I do not have that on the layout because of the clearance problem I talked about in the previous portion of this video with the track running underneath this area. But this is a climb. It's climbing all the way through here on this trestle and up through here in this curve. And then right here, there's 2 switches. So those 2 switches are these 2 switches right here. So the switch that goes to this track is to a spirits distributor, and the switch that goes to this track is a paper mill. So this is actually a pretty recent vision. Excuse me, let me go back here. This is a pretty recent vision. So the buildings are still standing here, which is the warehouse area and stuff like that. The actual mill machinery and all that stuff like that was back in this portion here above my finger where I'm pointing. So the switch went off the siding, went down here along this warehouse type building. So what we'll do is we're building this warehouse. I'll be building some of this mill structure here, but what I plan on doing is on that backdrop over there, I will put part of the buildings as flats and stuff like that with a chimney, and there's a chimney that comes up right up above in here. And then the track goes back to this was where the spirits distributor was, so we'll be putting that building in here also. And then there's a little road that comes in here that we're gonna have to fix in there. And I think that the boxcars were pushed along the spur against this building, but I believe they must have been loaded from the other side, outside on this road that was also where the tracks were in, because there was never any doors that I could see in any photos of the walls of that building. And I'm going to pause here in a minute, and I'll give you after I give you this overview and show you where the building looks like from some other pictures. And then the last thing here is it went up here, and there's this big building here which is labeled Standard Distributors. Well, that was a hardware distributor / there was a paper mill right up in here too that has been long gone, but that was also served by the branch, and I'm not doing that paper mill. I'm just going to do this hardware. It was actually a hardware store, and I guess standard distributors might be the same things to this day, and it was rail served also, and they would get wood and hardware and stuff like that. So that's the branch. Just a bigger view here, so you can see right here along here is where the standard distributor siding was, and then there was a trestle that went out this way across the Cobbosseecontee stream. So this is the view of detail of that paper mill that I'm going to be building in there. So again, you can see where the chimney was. This was all machinery and stuff for the paper making process in here, and these were the warehousing areas right here. And here's where the distributor, the spirits distributor, was served right here off the switch going this way. So here are some detailed ground images of that. So we're looking straight at the paper mill from the trestle right here that went across the Cobbosseecontee street. And there's farther back the other way looking at this trestle as it goes towards the T.W. Dix steel. I really would have liked to put that in here. Here's the trackage going up to the hardware distributor. This is past the paper mill now, going up the branch farther. This is that trestle I was talking about that went beside the paper mill, and down here you can see the tracks that went to the hardware distributor right there. Again, looking the other way down that trestle. Now this is where the main line comes across here, and that's going to Gardner, the downtown area. And then this right here, the tracks are moved, but this is the actual grade. There's a switch right here underneath these bridges, and the grade came up right past us here on to the left. And there's looking up the grade where it climbs up. And that right there, that building is the T.W. Dix office building. And here's taken down closer to the main road that goes by that same area. There's the office building for T.W. Dix, and there's the shed I'm talking about that had steel and stuff in it. And then on the other side of the road, you had this big massive structure, which is where they had a lot of fabrication and stuff. And then these two I-beams coming out, that's actually for unloading gondolas of steel here on this track on the road. So this is the paper mill, and this is one of the alcoves, RS-11s that Main Server had. And you can see them pushing the paper box cars back in along the mill here. And this is much later in the time when it was about ready at the end of its life, and they've, all the siding's torn down on this long warehouse right there, and there you can see where the track went down beside the mill. Okay, so I've laid everything out here. Here's a main roadway, and this roadway actually is an extension of Route, I think it's 201 that's coming up this way that we're going to work on. Comes around this way, and then we have a couple of houses, and there's T.W. Dix office building, which we showed earlier. There'll be the metal shed. Here will be the fabrication shed, which is the much larger building. This will all be paved over on the tracks right here where the roadway is, and they will unload gondolas at that point. And they also had gondolas they'd spot over here and put scrap in. Past the metal shed was a bunch of buildings that to me looked like they were converted into apartment buildings. So I'll put those along the backdrop here for that side of the street. Now this section right here is where ideally I would put the Cobbosseecontee trestle and stream. And if I had another 2.5 feet and I had another 6 inches of clearance, I would do that, but I can't do it justice. So I'm just going to make this a wooded area going across, and that'll kind of divide this section of the branch from the other section of the branch, which is on the other side of the stream. So here we have Harvey Distributors. There's a parking lot there. This building had multiple pieces to it, so you have a main building here with some other outer buildings. They would get box cars or insulated box cars with beverages, and they also would get tank cars of wine and then bottle their own wine and distribute it. So be interesting to fill that out. I haven't assigned any kind of tank cars for this service as of yet. I'm more into the building now and then getting into the fine details of my operations. But that will eventually go into it. And this is the road that comes down, and it'll go off on this side and be gravel lot by Harvey Distributors, but it's paved across here. And I'm going to get down here and move my little stepladder over a little bit so I can give you a better angle of it. So that road is paved. If you remember from the video, just before this video, I showed you those ground shots. So this is the direction looking out from the Cobbosseecontee stream. So you can see those couple of sheds that we saw through the breeze. And then this is going down along the actual mill. So we'll have the York paper, the main shed right here. And then there is the, there's like a little drive in here. And I think it was a loading dock. It looks like a loading dock from the views. And then there's a small building, and then there's the power plant with a smokestack there. And then the track on, after it goes across this little access road into this loading dock is all covered. And the, you know, in real life, this thing goes on about another, 200 feet. But, and it's also on a climbing hill. So if I could do this and have it get any higher, which I can't because of height restrictions with people being able to operate it, I would have started this track here, again, rising up on a grade until it got to the hardware distributor. But what I'm going to do to give us at least a good look of it, so when I take a picture from this angle of the York paper, it'll actually look like it does in the photo, is I'm going to do some hill here, wooded hill, and there'll be an embankment coming down, and an embankment down the road here, and then you'll have a Wilbur Hardware, which is, it wasn't Wilbur Hardware, it's named after my dad in his memory, but that's going to be the last business on the branch. So I've got Wilbur paper, which will get an occasional load of hardware. York paper is the big customer, so there was always a switch every day to that, bring in pulp from the wood mills or the paper mills in Maine to this plant where they take the pulp and turn it into a specialty paper. It was a very specific paper they developed here, and it was used for cards, and also it was coated and used, I think, if you're familiar with it, there's a special paper they use in the reactor plant manuals on the ships that was almost tear resistant. So it had a very thick fiber, and you know, so the pages wouldn't rip out of the books. Important when you don't want to have missing pages in your nuclear power plant operating procedures. And then Harvey, I mean, it'll be another sometimes used. And then we've got T.W. Dix, which is just an interesting business because it had no siding. It was actually served off of the actual road and the track running parallel to the shed. So I think I'm going to stop on this right now, and I'm going to take this video here and combine it with the other videos that I've been showing you on this, and post this just to get something out for everybody. And before I go, we'll see the producer here. He's down here doing a good job of monitoring what's going on the show, and then his assistant, Barbie. Anyway, thanks for watching all. Bye-bye.